Number 10. The Beast. The blue bouncing beast is more known for his super intellect than his super strength, although really super strength is his real mutant ability. His brute strength, durability, and super dexterity are the powers that he was granted by his mutation. Though why do we know him more for his intellect? Beast prefers to stay out of fighting when it can be avoided, and is often recognized as an academic and pacifist. Part of the reason he holds back when he is fighting probably comes back to those beliefs, as well as his fear of his more animal nature. The times that he is held back when it comes to fighting probably has to do with a few events following his transformation into his beast-like form. As you'll recall, he didn't always look as he does. He used to look like an almost completely normal human, and then he was also a grey beast for a while. Soon after he was transformed, he was drugged and hunted by Kraven, causing him to resort to a feral-like state. He almost killed Kraven near the end of the story, and later in the comics was manipulated into believing that he'd killed Iron Man. Both events were like a living nightmare for the mostly peaceful Hank. Number 9. Deku. When Deku from My Hero Academia receives his All-for-One quirk from All Might, he is forced to hold back his powers, as using them at full strength would destroy him. The power of All-for-One basically allows him to store up energy and then release it in one superhuman and often explosive blast. He must train and use the power carefully or risk damaging his entire body. Therefore, he carefully channels the power and controls the percentage of output to avoid injury to himself. And even with reducing it as much as he does and controlling it, his use of the power still causes his hand and fingers, which he channels the power through, to become disfigured. Number 8. Cyclops. The proof is in the pudding with Cyclops, who is forced to hold back his powers simply because he cannot really fully control them. His laser eyes, sorry friends, I'm just kidding, his optic blasts need to be kept in check, or he would just be blowing up stuff left, right, and center. Scott actually has 2 separate ruby quartz visors, one that helps him control his optic blasts and one that he wears when sleeping that completely contains these blasts. And if you don't believe that his powers need to be held back, just look at the evidence. Anytime he loses his visor in the comics or any other media involving the loss of his visor, usually results in him having to close his eyes to protect people. Unless Emma Frost is around to help him have control over this ability, of course. Number 7. Sunspot. Being able to convert solar energy into strength may not seem like it is something that is insanely powerful, but there was a time in the comics that Sunspot almost killed himself while doing this. Yeah, after losing control of his powers as the result of an injury, Roberto was forced to use a regulator headband to help him gain control of his abilities again. He was often depicted wearing the headband in the comics to help him limit the risk of losing control. And when he chose to ditch his regulator band in an attempt to access the full potential of his powers, he was actually warned that this would likely kill him. Fortunately, he managed to survive, but the risk was still very much there. At his full strength, Sunspot was even referred to as the strongest Avenger. Granted, this was Roberto himself talking, who is known for being kind of full of himself, so. Number 6. Wonder Woman. An insanely powerful superhero, Wonder Woman's abilities appear almost limitless. She has super breath, is insanely strong, is somewhat telepathic, can fly, and even sometimes can breathe underwater. Does anyone remember when the comics told us she had gills? Weird. Granted, these abilities are surprisingly not her own really, as they are gifts from the gods. But still, one cannot deny that Wonder Woman is pretty much unstoppable. So what is she holding back? Apparently, the full strength of her powers as a demi-goddess. Yep, the Wonder Woman we see in the comics isn't even all that she could be. It has constantly been established that her bracelets of submission are used to keep her powers in check and prevent her from becoming too OP. Number 5. Jean Grey. Another strong woman who has been classified as one of the strongest telepaths in the world, an Omega level mutant who also has telekinetic abilities. You might be thinking that I'm going to go down one of my favorite paths here with Jean and talk about Phoenix and Dark Phoenix and self-control in regards to those entities that Jean becomes. You'd be wrong. In fact, Jean had to have the full potential locked away from her from a very young age. When she first came to Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Professor Xavier actually put up psychic shields in her mind, recognizing she was not yet prepared to handle the full potential of her power, as it could put her and others at risk. Number 4. Quicksilver. What happens when you go even faster than the fastest man on Earth? That is something Quicksilver should never venture to answer, and after the events of No Surrender, I'm sure he learned just that. Quicksilver is an arrogant hero who sometimes plays villain and who normally indulges very much in his powers. The rate at which he can travel allows him to dash across oceans, walk on water, dodge bullets, and even time travel. However, during the Avengers No Surrender event, he traveled too fast, even for himself, and seemed to find out why restraining one's powers can be a good thing. In his own series following the comic book event called Quicksilver No Surrender, he seems to get stuck somewhere between time and space, in some kind of weird time-space limbo. The series itself is beautiful, and you should read it. It also involves a lot of self-reflection on Quicksilver's part, but besides that, it also serves to show us why Quicksilver holding back from traveling beyond the fastest he can is a good idea. Number 3. Rogue. You asked for more Rogue from me, and you got her. Coming in at our number 3 spot, Rogue is a hero who has always wanted to hold back. In fact, she is often portrayed as not even wanting to have her powers at all, even sometimes attempting to seek out a cure. The traumatizing experience of her first kiss with Cody Robbins, resulting in him ending up in a coma, has always kind of caused her to wish that she was different and, didn't have powers. She does her best to control, limit, and hold back her powers, being careful not to make physical contact with loved ones, and even when fighting, to limit the physical contact she does make with enemies. Number 2. Adam Warlock. Cosmic superhero Adam Warlock has been presented as one of the few people in the Marvel Universe strong enough to wield the Infinity Gauntlet. While he was persuaded to dismantle it after being convinced that it was too much power for any one person to control, the fact remains that his time on Earth and in space has allowed him to go on adventures which have ended up granting him an off-the-charts level of powers in the comics. Still, he does not often use all his power. Why? After using all his power to combine 2 timelines to close a fault created by one of the Inhumans' T-bomb explosions, he accidentally brings back a reality where he became Magus. As a result, there is a darkness that dwells within Warlock, and whenever he uses too much of his power, he risks releasing it. So in an attempt to keep Magus at bay, he is often forced to hold back at the risk of turning evil. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. A hero who is referred to as a god in DC, Dr. Manhattan's powers grant him omnipotence. Because he carries so much power and also knowledge of all things past, present, and possible futures, he often does not take action. In fact, in the events of the Doomsday Clock, he even refers to himself as a man of inaction. He quarantined himself to Mars and typically does not use his powers to their full capabilities. If you don't believe me, just look at the New 52, which exists because of Dr. Manhattan's interference in the Flashpoint event. I mean, if Dr. Manhattan did not hold back his superpowers as often as he does, we'd probably be seeing a lot more DC reboots than we do.
Number 10. Hal Jordan / Green Lanterns. So the Green Lantern rings function based on the user's willpower. That and you have to charge them. But the charge is so narratively convenient that you don't need to worry about it too much. So the bearers can use the rings to create constructs, whatever their imaginations can conceive. But there is a built-in restriction, one that is now very present, and that is lethal force is not authorized. One has to break the Lantern code to kill. Hal knows, he killed the whole Corps, and then some. So one can get the ring to kill, but it'll send an alert and the rest of the Corps and the Guardians are going to be down on you. So best to hold back and find another solution to your problems. Talking to you, Hal. Yes, I know he was possessed by Parallax. If one does break the code, you pretty much have a limitless weapon at one's disposal. This concept was played with in Dawnbreaker from Metal Knights, the dark Batman who would use the Lantern ring that came to him to kill. This was from the Dark Multiverse stuff. He became pretty much unstoppable thanks to the strength of his will. You need a lot of focus and drive to wield a ring, so it's important to hold back on those murderous impulses. Number 9. Jaime Reyes, the Blue Beetle, the third one. More space and alien artifacts. Jaime Reyes first debuted as the Blue Beetle in Infinite Crisis number 5 back in 2006, but he had appeared as a character 2 issues prior. The story of the third Blue Beetle is a great legacy story. So the first Blue Beetle was Dan Garrett, and Cliff notes he found a mystical scarab that allowed him to fight crime. It was a retcon, initially he was powerless. This was at the very start of the Golden Age. Fast Fast forward, he passed it on to his protege, the second Blue Beetle, Ted Cord, who was never able to get it to work, so instead he became a tech-based hero along the same theme. During Infinite Crisis, the Scarab was reinvigorated and it attached itself to Jaime Reyes. He was able to access it, and it formed into a protective suit around him with many capabilities. However, it became clear over time that this wasn't just some tech artifact. It began to talk to Jaime, to attempt to influence his actions, increase the amount of force he used, etc. This is more of an adaptation thing though. It turned out that the Scarab was a part of the Reach, an alien force at war with the controllers. Depending upon continuity, the holding back Jaime is doing is of the Scarab, making sure it uses appropriate force and doesn't overreact to situations in a desire to protect him. It's a symbiotic relationship, but not one anywhere near as intense as, say, Eddie Brock and Venom. It is grafted to his spine though. Ouch. Sadly, Rebirth has retconned pretty much all of this in one of the, in my opinion, missteps, and the Scarab is magical again. Number 8. One Punch Man. Firstly, all of you stop being mean to Johnny about his pronunciation. It's different phonetic points, different languages. So the dilemma for very underestimated hero One Punch Man is that he is looking for a villain who he doesn't have to hold back against because he just trained so hard. He was so determined to be the very best, like no one ever was. To punch them was his real test, to beat them was his cause. Only while he is the best. He can KO and explode pretty much any villain with one punch. The punch doesn't even need to land, it's so powerful. Won't someone be there so that Saitama doesn't have to hold back? Make his dreams come true. This is a really fun satirical series, and I feel like we also need to start including heroes from My Hero Academia as well. Thoughts and feelings? I'm sure you'll let me know down below. Number 7. Jason Blood. Gone, gone, the form of man. Rise the demon, Etrigan. I hope you like rhymes, because if not, then oh man, Etrigan is gonna be rough for you. So these characters first appear in The Demon #1 back in 1972. The two are bound together, and Jack Kirby, their creator, had no interest in creating them, but did it because DC wanted horror characters, and he was like, okay fine, here's a demon. There have been some changes in origin, but all in all, it's Merlin who binds Jason and Etrigan together, and the struggle has been real ever since. Jason isn't thrilled about being bound to a demon, and often works hard to live his life without summoning Etrigan at all, and is quite annoyed when some of his magical acquaintances, looking at you Constantine, will force him out. This is because there are some situations where Etrigan's strength and powers are required, but Jason is a skilled sorcerer, so he can avoid having to summon Etrigan for a good while if he's really in a snit. Why doesn't he want him? Well, Etrigan is a sadomasochist and has been known to go too far and torment people because he enjoys it. The two eventually find an even keel and come to respect each other. Etrigan has been largely dormant, but there's rumors about Justice League Dark, so maybe we'll see more of Jason Blood soon. It's a great name. Number 6. Jubilee. Okay, Jubilee is not weak, and she never really was. Her powers were always more than fireworks, even if she herself does describe them that way and can use them as such for entertainment, as she did when she first appeared back in the Uncanny X-Men #244 back in 1989. Breathe. Now, where a lot of the she's useless comes from is the 90s animated series, where she would consistently be ineffectual with her attacks just bouncing off of things like Sentinels. However, Jubilee actually has enormous potential. Emma Frost has noted that she has the potential to detonate matter at a subatomic level because her power set is that she generates pyrotechnic energy plasmoids. So in short, she could be a walking nuclear bomb. What's holding her back? Well, mental blocks really. She needs to hold back because, well, she could destroy everything, but she was held back by her inability to conceive of wielding that much power. She was always surprised when she leveled up. It's a good thing Jubilee holds back, because with all these people calling her useless, maybe one day she'll just snap. Number 5. Storm. You all have been asking for Storm since part 1. You have been scandalized that she wasn't on these lists. Well, she's here now. She first appeared in Giant X-Men #1 back in 1975. She was part of the big X-Men relaunch with a new lineup that regalvanized the books. The X-Men actually didn't do that well in the 60s. It's only retroactively that people went back and appreciated it. Storm is an Omega level mutant, officially now thanks to House of X. When most people think of her, they think, oh, weather control. But it's so much more than making it rain. She can start tempest, earth-shattering storms, and also manipulate weather on a cosmic level, cosmic storms. And also, like Magneto, she can also mess with the electromagnetic current. Storm doesn't use her full potential because if she did, she would destroy the world. She's only limited by the strength and will of her body, but with all of that training, generating a mega earth-ending level storm shouldn't be too difficult. So yeah, Storm holds back because she doesn't want to destroy the Earth. She lives here too. Also, random question. Wolverine in Storm or Black Panther in Storm? Let me know. Number 4, Spider-Man. He's another one that all of you have been clamoring for, and fair is fair, he's a lot more powerful than he appears, or than people give him credit for. Now when people go down the list of Peter's abilities, they often leave super strength down to the bottom, or off entirely. Instead, the attention goes to the wall crawling or the spider sense. But Peter is very strong, and he constantly has to restrain himself from really hurting people, including the villains he's fighting. He can punch Jaws clean off, but he takes with great power comes great responsibility seriously. Don't mess with Spider-Man. Just because he's wiry and doesn't have the bulk, people think, oh, he can't do anything, just puny Parker. Well, that's how you get thrown through a window. Just ask Wolverine. Number 3, the Hulk. How can we keep making these and not talk about Bruce Banner and the Hulk? That's what Bruce has been doing since he became the Hulk. He first appeared in The Incredible Hulk #1 back in 1962. After being bombarded by gamma radiation, when angered or stressed, Bruce Banner transforms into the Hulk, initially a mindless monster. Over time, the Hulk has developed into being his own being, separate from Banner, which has led to even more problems as the two try to reconcile their joint existence. It's gotten even worse in the Immortal Hulk, with poor dead Banner being dragged along by the still living Hulk. So this is a relationship that has changed, but everyone remembers the classic tale of Banner hiding out from the world because any little trigger could set him off and unleash the beast within. A man constantly battling against his own fears, doing nothing but holding back, essentially. Side note, there's one issue where She-Hulk tries to say that her life is worse than his, even though she's a sexy lawyer that everyone likes, or was a sexy lawyer. Recently she fought for her right to be ugly. Keeping up with comics. Number 2, Invincible. Going back to Kirkman's superhero epic following the life and times of Invincible, aka Marcus Grayson, no relation at all to Dick Grayson. Rick Grayson is dead to me. Invincible is the son of Omni-Man and half Viltrumite. He becomes one of the premier defenders of Earth after the betrayal of his father and the reveal that he was bred to be a weapon to conquer the world. He is incredibly strong, and at first he isn't even aware how much. His training with his father was just coming to a close when everything went down. If he doesn't hold back, he'll just beat his enemies into a bloody pulp, and he has on multiple occasions. Just a bloody mess, complete poundage, a level of gore that is heightened by the bright, happy way the books are drawn. Invincible would go on to become the leader of the Viltrumite Empire, so watch out. So far his reign has lasted centuries. Number 1, Raven. You knew she was coming, you were waiting. Raven is a core member of the new Teen Titans, the result of a forceful coupling between the demon Trigon and her mother Angela Roth. She fled in horror about what had happened, and took her daughter to the alternate dimension of Azarath, where she spent her life trying to teach Raven to suppress her emotions and master her control, a difficult task as Raven is also an empath. She hid her parentage from her for a while in hopes that with proper training she would never be able to access the dark emotion-fueled part of herself, but ultimately she failed. When Raven turned 18, she tried to prevent her father from crossing into Azarath. She is locked in battle with her father and the dark aspects of her nature. Raven has let go before, with disastrous results, far worse than ruining Nightwing and Starfire's wedding, which did happen. While she is a healer, she possesses many of her father's powers and traits and can manipulate darkness. Raven must constantly hold her emotions in check and not be overwhelmed by others, or also her father's forces, lest she give him what he wants and enslave the world. Definitely number 1 worthy. Number 10, Booster Gold. Firstly, Booster's powers are tech-based, yes, but they still count. Michael Carter, aka Booster Gold, first appeared in Booster Gold #1 back in 1986, and has changed a lot since his first appearance, though in adaptation form he is often stuck in that mode that he first appeared in. Booster was just an average person in the 25th century living in Gotham, down on his luck after he had been caught throwing football games. He ended up in disgrace and was working in a museum as a night watchman, and with the help of the security robot Skeets, he stole a bunch of tech and combined it to create his costume and went back in time pretending to be a hero from the future. At first he was really only interested in the fame and the merchandising. So much merchandising. But over time he transitioned into a real hero, and is sometimes quite crippled by the weight of the power he holds, particularly time travel. Booster can go and change pretty much anything, but there will be ramifications. Possibly one of the saddest time travel Booster stories is when he went back in time to save his best friend, the second Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, from being killed by Maxwell Lord. However, this messed up the timeline, but he was willing to live with it, just so that he could have his friend back. But when the Blue Beetle found out, he couldn't let him be so selfish and voluntarily went back to take his place in the timeline. Booster has to keep his selfish nature in check when it comes to time travel, and for the most part he does. Uses it pretty responsibly, but it weighs on him. Holding back can be a burden, but it's part of what makes one a true hero. Number 9, Black Bolt. Time to get real obvious. Black Bolt first debuted in Fantastic Four #45 back in 1965, and is a core member of the Inhumans, royalty. He can't speak. I mean, he can, but he shouldn't. His speech center in his brain is different. It produces an unknown particle that interacts with the electrons in his brain, which has caused him to have the most devastating sonic scream out there. Just whispering, he could destroy pretty much anything and anyone. Now, Black Bolt can control and channel his powers a bit with the help of his costume. That top part is a tuning fork, it's not just decoration. But he's hyper aware of this, and so is always very careful. Still, you learn a lot when you can't speak. Black Bolt knows things. And he's a secret weapon when you really need someone stopped. You can convince him to speak, and he only needs to say one thing, and that's it. Number 8, the Scarlet Witch. So her powers have been tweaked and retweaked over time. They're trying to get away from the all-consuming reality warping powers that gave the world House of M and the whole no more mutants thing. But for a time, and she still kinda does, have to be hyper aware of her powers, because she had a history of triggering them subconsciously based on her own desires, like the saga of her and Vision's children, which has been rendered more complicated in the modern era. Wanda Maximoff first debuted in the X-Men number 4 back in 1964 and has changed a lot since then. Her powers are now in the chaos magic realm with a mutant element on top, so there's more control, which is good, because the ability to change whatever one wants, that's a lot of a lot. It would and does drive most who hold it mad. Too much power, too much, beyond Omega. Number 7, Cable. Here we're getting into the has to hold back category, or rather had to hold back. He first appeared as Cable in the New Mutants number 87 back in 1990. He had been introduced as Nathan Summers in 1986. Back then he was just a baby and not a man out of time. Cable has very powerful telekinetic powers, but initially he had to use them to keep the techno-organic virus he was suffering from spreading to the rest of his body. That used to be the source of his cool metal arm. When he doesn't have to hold back, Cable is a force to be reckoned with. It's that dangerous combination of telepathy and telekinesis, along with that sense of self-righteousness he inherited from his father Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. Cable has built his own utopian floating city. That was during the Deadpool and Cable team-up. Good times. Cable is one who has fluctuating powers. He has them all. Oh no, they're gone. Oh yay, some of them are back. It just depends which area you're in. Number 6, Liz Sherman. Liz Sherman was first seen in Hellboy Seed of Destruction back in 1994, and is a being of immense power that she does not want and struggles to control. Her holding back is that quest for control and a fear of what happens when she loses it. Liz has pyrokinesis, the fire-starting ability, and oh, what a fire it is. Her powers manifested when she was 10 years old, and because of her strict religious upbringing, she thought they were a punishment from God for her sins. This has caused her to form a very complex relationship with them. It also didn't help that at age 11 she lost control and killed her whole family. To learn to control her powers, she had to learn emotional control, as that is what triggers them. She has to hold back her emotions and keep them on an even keel, all while wrestling with the bitterness her powers have left her with. Not fun. Number 5, the Flash. Any of them, doesn't really matter which. They're always holding back. Their natural speed is now fast. It's not the normal speed that the rest of us are moving at. They're just constantly moving through molasses to make us feel comfortable. Cause if not, it'd be like the Reverse Flash, how he just lets himself vibrate, which is terrifying. Just slightly out of phase. Always kind of crackling, red eyes. But the Flashes don't do that, because they're nice people. Still, there is a sadness to it, and it makes their good cheer more impressive. To always be being a bit out of step, having to be patient always as the people around you move as fast as they can, but it'll never be fast enough for you. It could leave you feeling disconnected. And again, the time travel possibilities of not holding back. Barry Allen created the New 52 reboot because of his meddling, even though the Doomsday crossover was trying to make that Dr. Manhattan's fault, but it took too long to come out. Art delays. We're only on issue 10. It's been years. Number 4, the Spectre. The Spectre first debuted in More Fun Comics number 52 back in 1940. Cliff notes: the Spectre is the spirit of vengeance who carries out his missions through human hosts. The first was Jim Corrigan, a police officer who made the mistake of getting engaged in a fictional story, so he was murdered. The last part was the Golden Age. He became an avenging spirit in the Silver Age, and he can be very harsh. He has godlike powers and can, wait for it, manipulate time and space, control all matter, has invulnerability, and limitless strength. So how is he holding back? Well, he's really held back by the morality of his hosts. The Spectre exists in a kind of dual host-like existence. The host is there, they're not fully subsumed, and they can resist some of the Spectre's more cruel impulses.
You can't kill a dead man.
The guilty must be punished for their crimes.
If they want to. Some hosts just go with it. Corrigan is notable for this. Hal Jordan was also a host for the Spectre, and he always fought him. This was after Hal died redeeming himself by blowing up the sun. He was then the Spectre until he was resurrected. Also, he would still go on dates with Carol as the Spectre. It was kind of awful. She could never move on with her life until she did, and then he came back to life. Poor Carol. Actually, no, she's awful to Hal. One day I'll tell you the full story of how she once got mad at Hal because he blew her off to save a dying planet. I mean, what's more important? Ferrous air being attacked or a planet breaking apart like Krypton? Number 3. Gambit. Gambit is a lot more powerful than people think. He first debuted in Uncanny X-Men Annual number 14 back in 1990. His powers work by converting the potential energy stored in an inanimate object into pure light kinetic energy, and he has a lot of potential to harness energy also. He also has hypnotic charm. In an alternate storyline, when his full potential was reached, he became New Sun. In this state, he could control all aspects of kinetic energy down to the molecular level, so he can manipulate the potency of energy, which yes, was as terrifying as it sounds. He could then simulate pretty much any type of energy, and of course time travel and cross dimensions in space, and just remake things to his will by turning into pure energy and joining the kinetic flow. Thankfully, the Gambit this happened to was an alternate reality one. Main vs. Gambit actually went up against his counterpart and was left less powerful as a result. Also, Gambit can now convert inert materials into toxic substances. It's a good thing Gambit just likes throwing his playing cards, because he could kill us all. Powers on top of powers with X-Men, sometimes too much. Blame Grant Morrison and secondary mutations, and also the ever-sliding power scale. Number 2. Reed Richards. This is a case of a couple of things. Sometimes he forgets about his abilities because he defeats his enemies more with his intellect and inventions. Another way he's holding back is that he could be a lot more devilish than he is in terms of proactively destroying threats, but the only thing holding him back is what Sue would think. We've seen this a few times. There was a what if story. What if Sue Storm died in childbirth, and after she dies, Reed just goes off the deep end, murdering their villains, claiming she was the only thing stopping him, but with her gone, what's the point? The sketchy things he also does behind her back. The Council of Reeds when he joined that League of Alternate Universe Reeds, most of which had gauntlets. The whole Illuminati thing. So his family and love, but specifically Sue, is all that's keeping Reed in check. She can't leave him for Namor, and Namor's been trying hard. He even told Reed he was trying, but that she wouldn't leave. The modern Fantastic Four run is trying to pretend Sue and Namor aren't a thing, for some reason. But I'll never forget. Bearded nice guy Reed? We'll see how long that lasts. Number 1. Superman. Hey, obvious, but he deserves it. The Man of Steel is always holding back. The launcher of the golden age of both heroes and comics has seen his powers grow a lot since his creation in 1938. His strength and potential are held in check by his inherent goodness and belief in humanity. When he uses his full potential, we usually end up with a dark Superman. Somebody mentioned it in the comments of part 1, and I was going to mention it anyway, but one of the best examples of this is from the finale of the Justice League Unlimited when Superman fights Darkseid and gives his famous "I feel like I live in a world of cardboard" speech.
I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die.
Superman has been holding back since he was a child. At this point, it's a habit, second nature, and thank goodness for that. The world couldn't handle a Superman always using his full power set, no matter how much kryptonite Batman has. Side note, does anyone else remember that story where Bruce helped Clark find and destroy all the kryptonite in the world? I was like, aw, sweet, and also like, that would never happen simultaneously.
And at number 10, Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is an Omega-level mutant who has depicted vast reality manipulation abilities. He's capable of manipulating matter and energy, projecting energy, creating incredibly detailed pocket universes, and a whole array of psionic abilities. For his age, the kid is wickedly strong, and he's potentially the most powerful being in existence. The reason Franklin Richards doesn't rank higher on our list though is because of his inexperience, which arguably is a factor holding him back, if you're looking at the main 616 version of the character. That being said, looking to his older self from Earth 4280, we know that his vast powers only continue to excel with age. He literally destroys 2 Celestials, then hangs out with Galactus, noting that the two of them will witness the beginning of a new universe together billions of years from now. Meaning, kid is immortal. Moving on to number 9, Iceman. Iceman Bobby Drake is a curious case. For starters, this early initial member of the X-Men had a much more limited range of powers back when he was first introduced. For the most part, it consisted of him being able to turn his body into an ice form and then freeze the air around him in order to make ice constructs. But in the following years, he got a serious power upgrade. Emma Frost would eventually take over his body, real briefly, unlocking a variety of different skills his powers entailed, all ones that Bobby had never pulled off himself, dropping him into Omega level territory. He would ask Emma to train him, but she refused. Overall, he is a case of a character who hasn't really applied himself. which is him holding himself back. He also held himself back because of other insecurities too, including his sexuality, something that was dabbled in more recent comics. Moving on to number 8, Gladiator. Gladiator's potency of abilities is dictated by his levels of confidence. So let's backtrack. Gladiator, aka Clark, first appeared in the comics in X-Men issue 107 from 1977, an analog to Superboy and an homage to Philip Wiley's novel Gladiator, which was written in 1930, and DC Superman was also partially based off of that. Fun fact, Clark is actually a combination of Kal-El and Clark Kent. And his powers? Well, get ready for an impressive list here. He has superhuman strength, speed, stamina, agility, reflexes, and durability. Flight, psionic abilities. He is strong enough to shatter a planet, capable of withstanding heat emitted from the Phoenix Force, has heat vision hotter than a star, and his warp speed flight allows him to move 100 times the speed of light, moving across galaxies before Heimdall could even blink in Mighty Thor issue 15 from 2016. But all of that is moot depending on his confidence levels. His powers decrease or increase based on his confidence and self-esteem, meaning he is technically his own worst enemy. And at number 7, Zatanna. Zatanna is yet another character held back by her confidence levels. The difference between her and Gladiator, though, is that her lack of self-esteem has actually caused the character to completely depower herself in the past, and plays out as much more of an ongoing struggle in the comics. Zatanna is a magical superhero who inherited her gifts from her father, allowing her to not only cast spells but manipulate magic as well. If her self-confidence is weakened, her abilities become hindered. In the past, due to a series of mistakes that she had made, she became completely powerless for a time. And at 6, Captain Atom. Captain Atom is a case of a hero who is already quite powerful but is limited by his own fears that if he were to fulfill his full potential, he may lose his humanity. Talking Dr. Manhattan style here. So Captain Atom, in theory, has no limit to his powers. His abilities come from his atoms continuously splitting and reforming, which gives him an infinite amount of power, limited only by his willpower and his imagination. He can manipulate energy, is self-sustaining, has super strength that matches that of Superman's, and can travel faster than the speed of sound. If he absorbs too much energy at once though, he can be transported through time uncontrollably. Now his power source is linked to something called the strong nuclear force, which binds protons to the nucleus. His atoms can lose coherence if he uses too much power in a short space of time, but it is speculated that he'll be able to overcome this at some point, meaning only his own willpower to retain his humanity is what prevents him from further excelling. And at number 5, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange generally has a very strong sense of what is right and what is wrong, and what he should meddle with and what he shouldn't. Often he finds himself practicing restraint in situations he'd dominate and solve much quicker if he were to intervene. Case in point, Civil War. The Watcher commented that Strange could have ended the conflict with a mere thought, implying that the Sorcerer Supreme has a whole lot more power than he's letting on. Instead, Strange went off to meditate in seclusion, letting Cap and Iron Man duke it out. There have also been times when Strange's hand was forced and he called upon powerful dark magic, like when he battled the Hulk post-Civil War, which caused him to lose the title of Sorcerer Supreme briefly. It just goes to show that Strange has the best interests of the Earth at heart, unwilling to use riskier and deadlier forms of magic he has at his disposal in order to get what needs to be done. And at number 4, Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is not just one individual. The character who first debuted in More Fun Comics issue 55 back in 1940 is a long line of sorcerers, each who had come upon Nabu the Wise, a god who granted them their power along with the Helmet of Fate, a mystical artifact that transforms its host into a powerful master of magic. Those donning the Dr. Fate mantle are capable of spellcasting, flight, telekinesis, telepathy, pyrokinesis, superhuman strength, invulnerability, and lightning manipulation. But here's the kicker. Nabu calls the shots, to an extent. If Nabu doesn't agree with what the iteration of Fate is doing, Fate's powers can be limited. In the initial Dr. Fate's case, Ken Nelson, if he was separated from the helm, he is significantly weakened but not entirely depowered, which is another thing. That aside, if Dr. Fate were to go full-blown homicidal or use his near-limitless sorcery powers to wreak havoc, there's a good chance that Nabu would prevent him from causing too much damage. Up next at 3, Havoc. Havoc is Cyclops' brother, a mutant with cosmic energy absorption and plasma discharge abilities. The waves of plasma energy can emanate from his body in all directions unless he channels it purposefully in a single direction. Generally, he wears a special containment suit, often with an indicator on his chest depicting how much cosmic radiation he has absorbed, and how much he has left within his cells. The concentration that's required of Havoc in releasing his energy in focused beams can be exhausting, especially over an extended period. And that's exactly why he's on this list. If he weren't focusing and allowing his plasmic energy just to shoot out of his body without a direction, his impact would be much more destructive. His plasma wave discharges can superheat and disintegrate objects or beings. So really, it is for the best that he holds back and concentrates so no one accidentally ends up dead. And at number 2, Professor X. Professor Charles Xavier is one of the most noble characters in Marvel's roster. First appearing in the X-Men issue 1 in 1963, this exceptionally powerful telepath is one of the most powerful psychics in the Marvel Universe. He has often sacrificed his own desires for the betterment of mutant kind, constantly striving for the greater good by promising a peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans. But there have been a good number of times where Xavier's more repressed, darker emotions have been released from him, causing devastating effects. Specifically in 1996, the sentient psionic entity Onslaught was created from the merging of a darker aspect of Xavier and Magneto's consciousness. During a battle between the X-Men and Magneto and his acolytes, Xavier used his telepathic abilities to shut down Magneto's mind, making him catatonic. The darkest aspect of Magneto's mind emerged and escaped into Xavier's subconscious, taking hold of Xavier's repressed darker nature until it grew into a persona of its own. And finally, at number 1, Sentry. Sentry, aka Robert Reynolds, has a slew of abilities that makes him one of the most powerful characters in Marvel's universe. Or multiverse rather. This includes superhuman strength, speed and stamina, a regenerative healing ability, molecular manipulation, matter manipulation, he's invulnerable, telepathic, can bend time, shapeshift, can become invisible, can astral project, and of course he is immortal. And there's more too that we've listed a zillion times on this channel. While the source of his powers has changed over the years, initially he got his abilities from a super soldier-esque serum that moves his molecules an instant ahead of the current timeline. But here's the kicker. Because of his powers, he's got an entity within him that's a dark side effect. The eroded humanity within Sentry known as the Void, who has his own set of dark powers that include infinity tendrils that attack a victim's mind, impaling them with traumatic visions of the past, present, and future. But now we come to his restriction. In order to prevent the Void from causing catastrophic damage, Sentry worked with Dr. Doom and Reed Richards to wipe out not only his own memory, but the memory of the hero and his evil half from the entire Marvel Universe as a means of protecting it. Those are some real drastic measures.